Hey everyone, Russ Frushtick here, and I'm talking to senior reporter Owen Good, who just spent 3 hours playing Fallout 76. One of the things that has been kind of confusing to people, the leveling system seems like a big change from traditional Fallout. Can you kind of walk us through it?
Yeah, I didn't get to see too much of the leveling system because I only went up to level 5, and you can go, multiple tens high. But this is all based on a card system and a perk system now. Now, you will still level up the traditional 7 categories of your special, which everybody remembers. But you're going to start at 1s across the board. You're not going to spec your character at creation, which is what I think some people, expect of a traditional Fallout game. And from there, as you level up, you can pick a special to increase. You will get the attendant benefit to it, whether that's carrying capacity or accuracy or whatever. And then you're going to get access to perk cards that you can equip to your special. And this is where it gets a little complicated because the number of cards you can put on a specific special category is equivalent to, what number that is. So if you're like a 4 in perception, you can take 4 cards that are perception based and lay it out there, or you can take 2 that are ranked up to level 2, which we'll get into more in a second, I guess, and put it there. So you kind of have to see it in action and make your choices at the outset to sort of really understand, okay, what's my strategy for building my character here? One thing that they were, very clear on telling us is when you hit the level up and you choose which part of your special to increase, the perk card that you take after that does not have to be correspondent to that category. So, what you can do, for example, is say you've already got duplicates of a perk card, and you want to increase endurance to take advantage of that. So you put 1 on endurance, you upgrade your perk card, but then you take a perk card in another category because you just want a new card and see how you can play it. So there's a little bit of mix and match. You can enable and disable perk cards at will. By going into the menu for the character.
So let's say you were building a sniper type character, so you had a bunch of perk cards that enhance sniping, but then you decided, I'm going to do some melee attacks now. You can deactivate the sniper attacks and sniper cards and activate like strength building cards, essentially.
Yeah, and it's adaptable in the sense that, you may have one vision for how you want to play, but then you just get a bunch of cards that are very useful to another style, and you go, might as well. And I think it works for a game that, again, is multiplayer in nature, whereas, if you spec yourself at the beginning, I think a lot of people, I don't know, it might imbalance the game somehow. I don't know. I think it's all better for people to just sort of start up and rank up and go in the direction that they prefer to play if they can, and then take advantage of the perks.
Yeah, it is pretty complex, and as you said, kind of hard to visualize without having played it yourself. But I know Todd Howard has commented on it, and it sounds like the idea is to make these characters that aren't the jack of all trades, like I'm great at everything, but more specialized in the traditional Fallout sense. One of the perks that I was particularly curious about that I know you had some questions about was charisma. How does that sort of manifest? Obviously, strength is obvious and endurance and stuff like that, but charisma is kind of a tricky one.
Well, charisma, they have some of the typical perks that you may have seen in past games, but I would say broadly speaking, it's mostly about conferring your benefits or buffs to others in your social group. But if you group up with, several other teammates, and I believe it's once your charisma is 3 or better, you can start to share, and it's share any perk card. It's not just your charisma cards, of course. But what you will see with the charisma perk cards is sort of a communal benefit, say in accuracy, or communal benefit in health or something like that. So charisma is less about dialogue options because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, there are no human NPCs in this. So it's less about, what people remember, which is, hey, there are different dialogue options if you have a high enough charisma. And it's more about being social with other human players that you play with.
Right. It's more of like a bard role in like the traditional D&D sense. Like you're giving these passive buffs to everyone.
Yeah, I would say that's a good comparison.
You talked about the NPC thing. I know a lot of people have talked about the fact that there are no human NPCs.
For those who haven't been following, what's been said about the game so far, you will still have mission givers. You will still have quests. but these are going to take place through things like, your overseer's log. In the story, your overseer has left the vault ahead of you, and you are following her out into the world on the larger story-based mission. And so you'll find holotapes for her, but you'll find holotapes for other people who live out in the world, and these may have, quests associated with them. You're going to run into a lot of robots an example of one that I ran into was I ended up at like an army installation, and there was still a drill sergeant type robot there who wanted to put me through basic training. So I said sure, and tried to do 3 of these obstacle courses. That's an example of this. I think where it is a little bit jarring is at the beginning. You wake up in Vault 76 and technically you're alone. It's like, where did everybody go? You might see a bunch of people hanging out in the lobby area as they're, beginning the game and sort of understanding, because there's a little bit of an onboarding that goes on in Vault 76. And then you get out into the world and there are all these people sort of running around doing their own things near the vault. I think one thing that Fallout, really delivered a lot of as the traditional RPG was that sense of isolation, of you against the world. And so, if you see somebody, they could be dangerous. Well, what Bethesda Game Studios wants to do here is, if you see somebody who is human, that is a human player. And I get the value there. But it's also, the question is, does that person want to play with me? Do I want to play with them? I mean, less so even about griefing, which of course is on everybody's mind, but it's just like, would I prefer to, really be a rugged individualist in this, which is something that Fallout really serves, or do I want to play it with friends? And if I don't want to, and I see all these other people running around doing their own thing, how does that fit with me narratively in terms of the overall purpose of what my character is doing out in Appalachia?
Sure. Did you dive into the PvP mechanics at all? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I did get into PvP just to see how it worked, because I knew I would be the one who was likely to die. And I did. I believe Famitsu killed me. But it's somewhat confusing, because you have something called pacifist mode, which is enabled until you reach level 5, but you can turn it off before then if you choose. Now, pacifist mode isn't about what others can do to you, it's about what you can do to them, and it's about it's basically no friendly fire if you are teamed with other human characters. So you can't accidentally shoot somebody on your team. And of course, as they've explained already, and it's tough to pick up, if somebody's shooting you and you don't want to be involved in PvP, they're only going to do like chip damage to you. It's going to be, until you return fire, it'll take a long time. I mean, they can hassle you. And I think there is an option in there. I didn't see it, but we were told, if somebody's just being a pain in the ass, you can block them. But that's on an individual user level. But to get back to the bigger sense of things, what kind of troubled me a little bit about PvP, was within VATS, it was still possible for me to end up targeting people I didn't want to shoot, who were human players. Either they were on my team or they were other humans in the area that I didn't want to engage. And even if I'm not doing any damage or, killing them, taking them out of the game, or it's an oops, I'm sorry, I'm still wasting ammo. And ammo is like anything else in this, it's a resource that you really got to be careful about. Melee weapons figured a lot into my, early stage playthroughs, just because, those 38 rounds were so precious.
Yeah, and in terms of you talked about VATS briefly, obviously this is a multiplayer game. You can't just slow down or stop the gameplay to decide, hey, I want to do an arm shot for 39% chance to hit. How does it feel differently now?
That's, as you said, it doesn't slow or stop time. What happens is it brings up, the familiar HUD of the target outline, and it's very useful for finding out where someone is who's shooting at you. There's a lot of cover in Fallout 76, and as they've mentioned, it's the first green Fallout game, because it's set 20 years after the bombs fell. There's still a lot of foliage. So you can use VATS to find somebody and go, okay, that person's shooting at me, or that thing is shooting at me. And it costs action points to do so you can't just spam it. But from there, you cycle through body parts, by flicking left or right on your right thumbstick. And at the outset, some of those percentages were really low. And I think that may be attributable to just the low perception that I had, because I only got up to level 5. It was easier for me in the early goings to just run and gun headshot. And I think I cracked off a couple on some super mutants in there. It was like I would see in VATS, somebody leaning over, say, the cornice of a building, and the headshot or the head body part percentage would be something like 58, and I would go, well, the hell with it, and just aim down sights and get the same effect on the fly. So there will be some users, I think, will see what I'm talking about when they pick it up, and it may be that this is just something that is only for the early goings, and once your perception and your accuracy increases, VATS becomes more useful. But it's definitely a different way to do combat in Fallout 76.
Sure. Do you get the impression like VATS is in there basically for people that aren't maybe super adept with like aiming with a controller? I
mean, I can't speak to their intent, but sure, that is a benefit. If you are not, if you're worried about this being a multiplayer shooter, like Overwatch, like Call of Duty, like the big names where you get shot up by teenagers and it's no fun, sure, that VATS can provide a little bit of an edge to at least let you get your licks in, especially if you're doing PvP. But I think it might also just be a familiarity thing, like, this is Fallout. People expect VATS. And so they've provided as best they can a way to do that with multiplayer.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of dealing with other people, obviously it's not just PvP. You can also do trading with folks. For people that have played games like Destiny, trading is like verboten. Like it's just not an option. A lot of the reason is because they don't want players at level 1 to just like get the best gear. Did you sense any like limitations on the trading systems in Fallout 76, or any reason why they've included it here, and whether it how it impacts the gameplay?
So when I was trading with, they had Bethesda Game Studios developers in the world we were in, and they had a lot of high-level stuff. I was just more going for staple goods like ammunition, but there are level gates to certain items. So I think that addresses the question of, you can't just, somebody is a buddy and they've got, all kinds of good gear because they've been playing longer and they buff you up. But you can, it can just be a complete, donation thing. You can set the price to 0 of anything, and the person says thank you very much, and that's just the same effect as giving over. So they encourage trading. There's a specific emote for it saying you're willing to trade, and I think it's also sort of the scavenging mentality of going around the wasteland. Who knows what you have that's useful to somebody else? Obviously, as you get into creating your camp and your base, building up a workshop, that sort of thing, raw materials become very important to the infrastructure, and especially to crafting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest question, just to close this out, is for people that are fans of Fallout, the addition of multiplayer, the lack of human NPCs. Do you feel like this is too far beyond, like, apart from what a Fallout game is, or do you think this feels like Fallout DNA with like some new stuff added in?
I think I hate to be wishy-washy about it, but I think at the time will tell sort of thing. I can't make that judgment even off of 3 hours of play, especially as frenetic as it was, because it wasn't just the 3 other people on my team; it was everybody else in the room, about 4 dozen folks, running around. Now as I respond to it, yes, I'm excited to play it because it's more Fallout, and I'm a big Fallout fan. And it will have a main quest line and some things that, I identify with, the big payoffs of playing Fallout, what makes me feel good about it. But it is going to be a different thing. It's not going to be the kind of role-playing game that people usually see from, Bethesda Game Studios, like a Skyrim or like a Fallout 4. It is definitely Fallout with friends, and there are a lot of things that are geared toward that. So as you get more, I think the direction where you will get more out of it is that you play it with other people, even though you can solo it. They're very, careful to say you can go through this whole thing by yourself. And a lot of, Pete Hines was saying that's the way he prefers to play it even too. I'm just going to have to play it by myself for a lot longer before I get a sense of, okay, where does this really fit in with New Vegas, with 3, with 4, the things that I have really enjoyed playing the most, as far as its appeal.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Owen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.